Hello everybody, it's me, Aaron Collins, and this is another edition of me addressing worldly issues the Valley Way. Today I'm going to do an analysis of a movie called War of the Planet of the Apes. This movie takes place years after the second sequel, with Caesar, who is leading his genetically alteredly intelligent apes into the woods to try to find peace. However, they're attacked by a group of military personnel known as the Alpha Omega. Alpha Omega is led by a ruthless colonel who's trying to destroy any remnants of the apes for the simple fact that because there was a strain, a disease called the simian flu, which causes humans to devolve rather than evolve, causing them to go back to their primal nature, their primal state. This particular disease is what caused the colonel to kill his own son because his own son exhibited symptoms of this disease. In the ensuing battle, Caesar's wife Cornelia and his son Blue Eyes are both murdered by the colonel, which causes him to go into a rage. However, many think that Caesar's becoming more like Koba, who in the previous two films was a chimpanzee that hated humans because of his own brutal treatment, but he began to exhibit more reckless behavior and therefore became even a rival of Caesar. Caesar considered Koba too erratic, while as Koba thought Caesar was too weak. He didn't want to act. Caesar was more strategic, whereas Koba was more reckless, more brutal. Upon seeing that his family was destroyed, he notices that there's other apes that are fighting with Alpha and Omega. One of them being an albino gorilla named Winter, and then another one, a regular colored gorilla named Red. Now, I want to compare these two. The gorillas that are working for Alpha and Omega as servants, as pack animals to carry their weapons, are known as donkeys. The donkeys represent basically the coons or the sellouts of the ape world, whereas they go against their own for human beings. In this case, the human beings parallel for blacks that go against their own for white people. So it's very interesting how this plays out, considering that one of the racial derogatory terms that whites have considered black people have always been apes and monkeys. So anyway, Caesar sets out to seek revenge for the death of his wife and son. However, his advisor goes with him. His advisor, which is a silverback male gorilla named Luca, his lieutenant, a chimpanzee named Rocket, and his sidekick, the one I call the wise man, the Yoda of the group, an orangutan named Maurice, who speaks in sign language, go with him. They basically go to keep Caesar under control. They're like his consciences. Along the way, they encounter a human male who worked for Alpha Omega, but right before he was about to slaughter the apes, Caesar kills him. Unwittingly, they cause the girl that was with him to be his daughter to be orphaned. A young lady who's nameless for the first few minutes in the film, who cannot speak. Maurice thinks it's a good idea to not leave her and decides to take her with them. Eventually, he names her Nova. Now, along the way, as they're walking around, Maurice and Caesar are discussing this young girl, considering that she may be a threat. However, she can't speak, and she's so young, therefore she's not really considered a threat. After a while, they come across an Alpha Omega checkpoint when they're surveying what's going on, when they're ambushed by two Alpha Omega soldiers. Luca is killed in the process, which causes the young girl, who was now known as Nova, to be sad, because previously Luca had given this young girl a flower put in her hair. So Nova began to bond with the apes. She gave the flower back to Luca as he lay dying, which causes Caesar to go into even a further rage. Caesar at this point is battling against himself because some of his companions are starting to think he's more like Koba, the reckless chimpanzee I told you about, who really didn't want to strategize, the one who hated human beings. Caesar finds himself starting to become more and more like him. So with the death of his advisor Luca, he decides to go at it alone. But before he leaves, they come across the house of a hermit ape who goes by the name Bad Ape. Bad Ape, mistaking the horses to belong to humans, causes the apes to come after him. When they discover that he's an ape and that he can speak, he becomes an ally. So now, Bad Ape, Rocket, Maurice, Luca, and the young girl trudge through the snow looking for the colonel that killed his family. As they come to the checkpoint, as they come along the military base, as they come across the base, they notice other apes are strung out, starved, some of them are even dead. They see the apes living in substandard conditions, they're starving. Caesar goes inside, leaving the other apes out to fend for themselves, but they rescue him eventually. However, while inside, Caesar discovers that there is another ape there who's working with the humans named Red. He's a donkey. Now, I said before that the donkeys represent the coons. Coons represent a different breed altogether. Black people who will sell out their own to get the white man's scraps. And this is basically what this group of apes is doing. They're selling out their own to get the human scraps. So upon arrival, Luca does everything, Red does everything he can to abuse Caesar and to demean him, strictly for the sheer entertainment of the humans. Upon seeing face to face with the colonel lets Caesar know how he's impressed with him, with his intelligence, and how he plans to wipe out the entire ape strain, the entire ape race. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. However, upon this discovery, this is when Caesar is told by the colonel that he, in fact, killed his own son because his son exhibited symptoms of what was known as the simian flu. He claims he did it to save humanity and mankind, so he sacrificed his own son. The colonel, however, is infected himself, and he begins to eventually start exhibiting symptoms of the strain himself. While he's in a room in a bed that Caesar discovers him right before he escapes. Caesar is still hell-bent. Caesar is still hell-bent on wanting to take out the murderer of his family. But once he sees him laying at his mercy, starting to devolve, starting to lose his own humanity, he takes mercy on him. The colonel, however, takes the gun that Caesar was going to use on him and takes his own life with it. After this happens, a rival military organization comes in and fires on all of the Alpha Omega personnel, causing a full-on war to come out, a full-on war to break out. It was during this war between the humans that the apes used this time as escape. Maurice and Bad Ape at this time build an underground escape way for all the other apes to just jump through, with the children being one of Caesar's son, being one of them. Caesar had another son named Cornelius, who was also rescued. Oh, also, another key point in this film, that while Caesar was in a cage being tortured, the little girl, Nova, comes to him and gives him a doll. It was during this time when she bonds with him, she escapes before the humans discover her. Now, because she was also the daughter of one of the human beings that began to devolve, that began to digress into a primal state. It was during a moment of torture that the colonel discovers the doll and wonders where it came from. So in order to keep the girl from being discovered, Rocket sacrifices himself and causes a diversion, and he himself gets captured and thrown in a cage with the other apes. However, Rocket's able to communicate with the other apes and let them know that help is on the way, that they've been getting rescued, that they'll be getting rescued soon. During the time of them being rescued, the rival Alpha Omega decides and discovers that the apes have escaped, and upon seeing them escaping, they fire on the apes, killing many of them. It's during this time that Caesar decides to destroy the Alpha Omega base, but upon destroying the base, he is also fired upon and wounded in the process with an arrow from a soldier. It's during this time that Red, the donkey, starts to see himself and starts being troubled, starting to be torn between himself helping the humans and being what he is as an ape. In this last moment of clarity, he decides to become what he always was, an ape, and save his fellow ape Caesar from being shot again by the soldier. He fires a rocket launcher, killing the soldier, which causes Caesar to escape with the remaining apes. However, it causes Red himself to be executed by the soldiers that he was helping. Now, what does this remind you of? The moment of clarity I was mentioning before with Red reminds me of a scene, the end scene from Get Out, when Walter, who was actually Grandpa in disguise, upon the flash of the camera, of Chris's camera, he begins to realize who he was. He is snapped out of a sunken place, and in that moment of clarity, he decides to take his own life. But before he does that, he shoots Rose right before he turning the gun on himself. So that's the same moment of clarity, basically, that, to me, that Red did for himself after discovering who he was and what he was doing. He decided to do one last good thing, and that was like his apology to Caesar. So after the apes escape, the rival military comes in, finishes off the rest of Alpha and Omega, as well as the explosion. The explosion itself of the destruction of the base causes a chain reaction, causes an avalanche of sorts. However, the apes were able to climb into trees and eventually go seek residence elsewhere in an oasis. So everyone's united. It's during this time that Maurice, the wise orangutan, is talking to Caesar and discovers that Caesar has been wounded, but the wound has been infected and he's still bleeding. Maurice decides to talk to his comrade and let him know that his son Cornelius will know how good his father was. That his father was a great warrior. It's after this that Caesar passes away. Now, many comparisons have been made to the apes to the black race. In the very first reboot, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that could be likened to the Black Revolution. The blacks rising up against this wicked system, a white supremacist system. It could be taken as that. War for the Planet of the Apes is basically the apes' final fight against humanity. A humanity that wanted them to die. It's like what's left of humanity, they began to devolve. Now, what does that remind you of? That basically reminds you of black people coming into the knowledge of who they are and begin to build societies and begin to band together, begin to stick together, begin to come together and build empires again, become the great people that we once were. And then everyone else will sit and take notice and fall in line. So this is my commentary, this is my analysis. A war for the Planet of the Apes. I might have missed some things, but I was trying to get to the key points. But my analysis, comparing it to the black race, to black experience in society. So anyway, everyone, let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video, and remember that God loves you, I love you. Let's do life.